All right, Commanders fans, let's talk. And before we get into today's news, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button right now, because one thing has become crystal clear. This organization is actively trying to get better, trying to raise its standards, and trying to put Washington back in a position to win meaningful football games. The moves they've already made show urgency, but the next one, it might be the most important of all. By the way, if you want official Commanders beer, jerseys, hoodies, hats, or the new Sideline collection, I left the link to the official store below. It helps the channel and keeps you geared up. And right now, that move has just gotten a lot more complicated. The Washington Commanders wasted absolutely no time when it came to the offensive side of the ball. Promoting David Blau to offensive coordinator was decisive, intentional, and clearly rooted in continuity around Jaden Daniels and the young offensive core. But on defense, that process has been slow, deliberate, and increasingly tense. Head coach Dan Quinn finally made the call to move on from Joe Witt Jr., and with that decision came a massive amount of pressure. Quinn knows it, the front office knows it, and frankly, every fan watching this team knows it. If the Commanders are going to save Quinn's tenure in Washington, this defensive coordinator hire has to be right. And now, thanks to the latest coaching domino to fall across the league, the search just hit a major roadblock. One of Washington's top defensive coordinator targets, Jeff Ulbrich, is essentially off the board. The Atlanta Falcons hired Kevin Stefanski as their new head coach, and all signs point to Stefanski retaining Ulbrich as his defensive coordinator. That move effectively removes one of the most popular names linked to Washington's search. According to ESPN's John Keim, Ulbrich was widely viewed as either the top target or very close to it for the Commanders. Losing him isn't just disappointing, it forces a pivot. And this wasn't completely unexpected. Ulbrich was still under contract in Atlanta, and the Falcons had the right to block lateral interviews. Teams usually don't do that unless the coach is aligned with staying put. Atlanta ultimately rewarded Ulbrich with a new 3-year deal, reinforcing how highly they value him. Translation: Washington now has to move on, quickly. The Commanders have been patient, and in some ways that patience made sense. There were still playoff teams playing. There were head coaching vacancies around the league. There were moving pieces everywhere. But patience can turn into hesitation, and hesitation can turn into missing out. With Ulbrich no longer an option, Washington can't afford to sit back and wait another week hoping something magically opens up, because while they wait, other teams are acting. At this point, there are 3 realistic candidates who can genuinely change the trajectory of this defense: Brian Flores, Carl Scott, and Jonathan Gannon. Those are the names Washington needs to focus on aggressively. Flores, in particular, stands out. If the Commanders are serious about fixing one of the worst defenses in the league, Brian Flores should be at the top of the list. His track record speaks for itself. Aggressive, creative schemes, consistent pressure packages, and a history of outperforming talent levels. Flores doesn't wait for perfect personnel. He manufactures disruption. But here's the danger. Flores is interviewing for head coaching jobs, including a second interview with the Pittsburgh Steelers. If Washington waits too long, he could be gone, and that would be a massive missed opportunity. If Flores is truly a candidate, this is the moment to show him that Washington is serious. Not next week, not after another round of interviews, now. Carl Scott is another intriguing option, a younger defensive mind who has done excellent work in Seattle, particularly in the defensive pass game. But Scott is still in the playoffs with the Seahawks, currently dismantling the San Francisco 49ers. That success is great for his resume, but problematic for Washington's timeline. Waiting for Scott might sound reasonable, but if the Commanders wait and miss on Flores, they could find themselves scrambling, and that's not where you want to be when hiring the coach responsible for fixing a broken defense. Jonathan Gannon feels like the easy hire. He's experienced, he's respected, and he'd likely accept the job immediately. But does he move the needle? That's the question Washington has to answer honestly, because at this stage, the Commanders don't need safe, they need impact. And then, out of nowhere, the candidate pool gains a massive new name, Sean McDermott. After 9 seasons as head coach of the Bilf Buffalo, McDermott was fired following a heartbreaking overtime loss to the Denver Broncos. Despite the ending, his resume is impossible to ignore. In Buffalo, only one losing season in 9 years, playoff appearances in 8 seasons, 5 straight AFC East titles, and a defense that ranked top 5 in scoring 5 times. Yes, the Bills' defense slipped slightly the past 2 seasons, finishing 11th in 2024 and 12th in 2025. But context matters. Before McDermott arrived, Buffalo's defense ranked 16th. After some early growing pains, they jumped to 2nd overall, launching a multi-year run of elite defensive play. Let's make this simple. Washington's defensive scoring ranks the last 2 seasons, 18th, 27th. A top 12 defense would feel like a miracle. McDermott has proven he can build and sustain top 10 units. He understands structure, discipline, and situational football, all areas where Washington has consistently struggled. The big unknown is whether McDermott even wants to coach in 2026. He may take time off, similar to what Mike Tomlin is reportedly doing. But if he does want to return, he will be one of the hottest names on the market, either as a head coach or a top-tier defensive coordinator. Washington needs to be prepared, because opportunities like this don't come around often. Here's the reality, Commanders fans. With Jeff Ulbrich officially off the table, there's no more room for waiting. This defense cannot survive another season of confusion, blown coverages, and late-game collapses. Dan Quinn knows his future depends on this hire, and the front office has to act accordingly. Whether it's going all in on Brian Flores, taking a swing on Sean McDermott, or making a decisive move with Scott or Gannon, the worst option is indecision. In 2025, the Washington Commanders rolled out their Super Bowl-era throwback alternate uniforms, and the response around the league and among fans was overwhelmingly positive. For the first time in a long time, fans felt something familiar again: pride, nostalgia, and a visual connection to the most successful era in Washington history. Almost immediately, the assumption around the league and among fans was simple: these weren't just alternates, this was a preview. And now, according to a new report, that assumption may have been right. FanDuel's Zach Cohen, who has built a strong reputation for accurately revealing upcoming uniform changes across the NFL, dropped an interesting nugget on social media. According to Cohen, at least 4 teams are expected to introduce new alternate uniforms, and the Washington Commanders are one of them. Cohen clarified that in the eyes of the NFL and its retail partners, the word new can mean a lot of things. It could be a completely redesigned uniform, or it could be a subtle variation, a different helmet, a stripe change, or a logo adjustment. In other words, Washington's alternate uniform could be dramatically different, or it could be a carefully calculated evolution. And that's where speculation begins. Cohen went one step further and speculated about something that instantly grabbed the attention of the fan base: the possible return of the Spear logo. To be clear, even Cohen emphasized that the Spear logo itself is purely speculative at this point, but speculation doesn't come from nowhere, and in Washington's case, the breadcrumbs are very real. Over the past couple of seasons, the Commanders have visually leaned into Spear imagery more and more. From graphic packages and hype videos to in-game presentations, the Spear has quietly re-emerged as a symbolic element of the franchise. They even introduced a new tradition where organizational legends appear in-game holding a spear, a not-so-subtle nod to the team's heritage. Teams don't do that accidentally. Before the Super Bowl-era alternates debuted in 2025, Washington's only alternate uniform was the black kit, featuring militaristic numbering, a bold W on the front of the helmet, and player numbers replacing the traditional logo on the sides. That uniform had its supporters, but it never fully resonated across generations of fans. It felt modern but disconnected from history. The Super Bowl-era look changed that. Those uniforms felt like a bridge, honoring the past without completely abandoning the present. And if current reports are accurate, they're not going anywhere. In fact, many expect them to become permanent parts of the home and away rotation, possibly with a burgundy version added to complete the set. Which brings us back to the alternate. There are several realistic possibilities here: a full throwback alternate featuring a Spear logo helmet, a modified black uniform with Super Bowl-era striping, a subtle helmet tweak that technically qualifies as new, or something entirely unexpected that blends multiple eras. The key point is this:
Any change at all counts as a new uniform under NFL rules, and that flexibility matters, especially given Washington's unique situation. Normally, NFL teams are restricted from changing their primary uniforms more than once every 5 years, but there's an important exception: new ownership. The Commanders officially entered that category in 2023 when Josh Harris took control of the franchise. That ownership change allows for greater flexibility in branding and uniform updates. However, even with that exception, the process still takes time, roughly 18 months from concept to execution. That timeline strongly suggests that the Super Bowl-era uniforms introduced in 2025 were likely fast-tracked shortly after Harris took over, serving as a soft launch of a larger rebrand, which would make 2026 the real target, the full unveiling, the finished product, the moment where Washington finally says, "This is who we are now." From a branding standpoint, the spear checks a lot of boxes. It connects directly to Washington's historical identity. It's aggressive, simple, and visually powerful. It resonates with longtime fans without alienating newer ones. It fits the current organizational messaging around toughness and tradition. Most importantly, it represents continuity, something this franchise has lacked for years. Josh Harris has consistently talked about stability, long-term vision, and reconnecting with the fan base. A spear logo, used responsibly and respectfully, accomplishes that without reopening old wounds or repeating past mistakes. This isn't just about uniforms. This is about identity. For years, Washington felt like a franchise searching for itself, changing names, colors, messaging, and direction. What we're seeing now feels different. It feels intentional, coordinated, thought out, and the fact that most fans loved the Super Bowl-era alternates, that's huge, because it means the foundation is already accepted. Any additions in 2026 would be enhancements, not corrections. So now, I want to hear from you. Who should be the Commanders' next defensive coordinator? Would you take Brian Flores immediately? Should Washington pursue Sean McDermott if he's interested? Or do you believe another candidate is the right answer? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's debate it. And if you made it all the way to the end, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss Commanders news, rumors, and breakdowns like this. Official Washington Commanders gear, fresh new drops, and exclusive items, all in the link below. Check it out. This hire will shape the future of Washington football, and we're about to find out if they get it right.